Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Hit Monkey Season 1, Episode 2, Bright Lights, Big City. The episode is rated TVMA, so this video there will be spoilers for the episode and the one leading up to it, and another episode that I loved. So yeah, no sophomore slump, another really strong outing. They are, now that they've gotten most of the characters, I mean, this one introduces I guess one or two new ones, three maybe. Um, you know, episode one got most of the characters in place and set up like the core concept, and now we're starting to, the entire revenge quest is, more underway here, and in part because it's early, in part because part of this is like a comedy, and in part because this is a goddamn monkey. So far, the revenge quest is not going super well. And yeah, I thought it got a lot out of just this whole fish out of water kind of thing. And yeah, I think the rest of this is going to be mostly chronological. So we open on the one survivor who is not surviving for very long of the mountain, and he just keeps saying the word monkey. And once the general has heard it, he's like, okay, I've served my narrative purpose here, and croaks. And yeah, it is very understandable that the general thinks it's a code name. It's possible that by the end of the episode, he no longer thinks so, but I guess it doesn't make a huge difference anymore for him personally. And yeah, I think that does pretty much cover the that entire scene. So I think this is a good time to briefly talk about. So Bryce, now that he is incapable of affecting the physical world directly, other than yeah, what he can do is give advice, and he can observe to Monkey, and you know the yeah, give advice and observe things if Monkey is close enough, and the that does mean that his at times incessant chatter, like, hypothetically could get annoying. Personally, I don't think it has so far, and I think they found a good balance between that and still having like moments with emotion. And part of it is just the fact that, yeah, he is being forced into this situation that he is very unused to and uncomfortable with. The part with him at the funeral, where at first he's like, that's a little harsh, and then he's just quiet, that hits so much harder than if he were, you know, not talking so much. And I think that is, yeah. Um, I quite appreciate that, so it's clear that Monkey and Bryce can understand each other. At least now, I think. Yeah, before he didn't always seem to understand what Monkey was saying or doing, but now clearly, some kind of afterlife magical kind of thing, whatever ties Bryce to Monkey, also not allows him to understand the hoots, growls, and screeches. And that, of course, means that now the next step is trying to find a way to get Monkey to communicate with living people. And by the end of this episode, he's learned a little bit of sign language. And yeah, I appreciate them going over the rules. And Bryce is also someone who seems like he would absolutely just explain the rules. In the first episode, he also kept telling the truth. People just didn't believe him. And Yeah, I like the idea of, I don't know, I kind of wasn't really thinking about, I just saw the two of them at a train station, and I understood, okay, we're definitely, they're headed, they're traveling. Didn't think about the fact that they'd have to be on the outside. And yeah, also really appreciate that they demonstrate the thing about, so if Bryce were to, and he can apparently just float if he wants to, but just not very far away from Monkey. Yeah, he immediately gets pulled back, not just, you know, it's not just there's an invisible wall there. And I think that does, yeah, so Monkey makes it to the city. I kind of like the fact that, you know, there's so far not a huge range of reaction from humans to Monkey. Some of them are just confused and staring. Some of them are mildly annoyed. I guess by the end of the episode, still no one has really realized, or other than the two cops, that the monkey is killing. Didn't everybody die that could have seen? I don't know, maybe not. Or I guess maybe also not the Olivia Munn character. And I don't know, maybe there were some witnesses, whatever. And that's, and yeah, there's a couple where, we see capitalism in action, the Love Hotel. It's like, here's some money. And he's like, I mean, a paying customer is a paying customer. Sure, here, monkey, take the access card to a room. And also just the way, I wasn't sure how much they were going to do with it. I think they did the right amount of just monkey being, temporarily overwhelmed by, the bright lights of the big city and, sensory input far away from the mountain. And I think that does pretty much cover the... Yeah, so I guess what I'll say is, I'm not saying that this is necessarily autistic coding for Monkey. I'm not entirely sure yet, but it resembled autistic coding in the, sensory overload, struggling to communicate, you know, trying to make things work despite obstacles, and at times like a sort of one-track mind kind of thing. Oh, right, shit. In case this is the first time you hear me talk about, no, I say that with love. I have no problems with, autistic people as like a group. They are individuals. I've met many wonderful autistic people. Now, let's see. I think that does pretty much bring us to the so I mean that was Silver Samurai, right? That's not me, because they're both Marvel characters. Yeah, I kind of like someone's dressed, someone's... Wait, is it called cosplaying when is cosplaying Comic-Con only, or no? I forget what they're called, but someone's standing there dressed in that, garb, and then tourists can take pictures, selfies next to. But yeah, that is a fun. So Silver Samurai does exist in the hit Monkeyverse, and I think that does pretty much. Yeah, I guess I should have expected um, roughly this much overlap with the Fox X-Men movie, The Wolverine. Anyway, I suppose that does pretty much bring us to the let's see. I think the next was when we're introduced to the new partner of the cop, and I thought that worked well. As I'm looking forward to seeing more of them working together. Very classic mismatched, pairing. Their partners on this police thing, and you know He's a oh god, it feels so silly to even say out loud, but they paired the rookie with the doesn't follow the rules, hardened veteran. And yeah, I can imagine there'll be some push and pull. They'll both affect each other. I could see her becoming tougher, more, you know, yeah, and because she kind of feels a little sheltered right now. She was the best cop out of two, and he might end up more, at least slightly more optimistic and, let's see. I also really appreciate that by the end of this, I'm not entirely sure how she feels about his, obsession with finding whoever killed. I mean, I would definitely say by the end of this episode, I think he might suspect Monkey because Monkey, you know, when Bryce displayed his weapons, monkey see, monkey do, Monkey's style appears to be, or yeah, might appear the same as Bryce. But yeah, I don't know if she's going to, I mean, she just says, oh, okay, when he says he's going to kill the person who killed his partner. But does that mean she's just going to stand by and watch him execute someone necessarily? Or is she like, because that's also, if she is, yeah, it depends, because on the one hand, she's clearly got a strong moral compass. She doesn't want people doing the wrong thing. But on the other, she was sent there to learn from him. That's why they were paired up, she's been told, to learn from him. So that's a really interesting dynamic that I look forward to playing out. I suppose that pretty much, let's see. Yeah, I kind of like the thing about like I'm off duty unless you want to watch me eat, and she's like, I would love to watch you. She doesn't literally say that, but just it's funny that he's literally saying, listen, I can't prevent you from following me, but I'm not going to be doing police work, And then you have the thing about, he gets a drink, finishes it very fast, and just, I think, yeah, just as he's finished the first glass, she says the line, they told me you might have a drinking problem, and then he asks for another drink. Yeah, and right, and it is known that he is corrupt. It was not only the other guy who knew. Because that's the thing, like in the first episode, I kind of thought he was just like over all of this, like he didn't really want to be doing it anymore, so he didn't put in a lot of effort. But no, he is actually, or was, I guess, corrupt, and that means it's, that's why the partner said it would be difficult to, or there's no way, I think he said, that he would make cop of the year with that partner. And I suppose that pretty much does. I will also acknowledge, I suppose I don't know for sure if he is the only cop who doesn't currently have a partner, so it's not impossible. I'm just going to say the following is basically speculation. I would not rule out that whoever's in charge of assigning partners took one look at her and was like, there's no way we're going to make a good cop out of her. She is too sheltered, and because of that, they're going to pair her up with someone they think she's not going to learn very much from, and essentially maybe they hope that she'll stay out of their way, maybe even eventually resign. I've heard of such things in social environments like that. And certainly, if they told her to her face, "You're never going to make it here," that's just going to make her more determined. And but yeah, I'm looking forward to, like, I appreciate, yeah, she is inexperienced, but she's clearly also really, like, I guess I should just say, but yeah, tenacious. She is not gonna just. And I also like the fact that she's not gonna give up, and I like the fact that she is choosing her battles. She doesn't immediately make a big deal because the other guy is basically saying, her partner is saying that he's going to commit a crime, and at that point, like, she could turn him in, but that would maybe burn a lot of bridges before she's even gotten to them, or she can go along with it and maybe because the thing is, like, yeah, maybe she'll try to stop him when they get there, because like if she can talk him down, maybe they could get to a place where no one finds out that he was ever going to do it, because if they do just arrest the person, or in this case Monkey, that's a very different situation. But the yeah, you know if she does not do anything to stop him, she I want to say the word is accessory. If you knowingly you know aid and abet a criminal action. Anyway, I think that is about so Monkey, in dreams, communicates with the leader of the monkeys and the alpha. And yeah, like that was genuinely a compelling, it's this thing of revenge will not bring back those that died. And the fact that Monkey is aware of that and still, or has been told that rather by Alpha, and still kills, still pursues revenge. That is interesting, and I wonder if that is something that is going to change, maybe, but that, because that is the thing. I think there are a number of monkeys in that tribe, or were rather, that if they had survived, they would not have grabbed a gun. They would grieve. They would be very upset, but they would not be seeking revenge. But Monkey does have a temper, and that does make it more interesting. Like, they are already challenging this notion of, because there are, when you have a revenge narrative, obviously, you know, you can choose to, I mean, technically neutrality, I guess, hypothetically is possible. Just let the audience sit with what is happening and try to frame it in as neutral of a way as possible. But a lot opt for either glorifying or questioning the revenge. And yeah, I really appreciate that. There's some questions raised here, because part of the thing is, if you're getting revenge for someone who wouldn't want you to do so, then aren't you just doing it for yourself? And obviously, to be clear, in real life, I'm against revenge. Like, in general, I think violence should only ever be the last resort. There are times where it is necessary. I acknowledge that the Stonewall riots needed to happen. It was important in World War II to fight the Nazis. But a lot of the time, you are just perpetuating a cycle of violence. Now, I suppose that does pretty much cover the, I meant to say at the start of this video, so there's a bunch of observations that I made about the first episode that still apply to this one. So if you haven't already watched my video on the first episode, just so, moving on. I think, just so I am noticing things that just, I'm trying not to restate things in these videos. Anyway, on the same property, I mean, I feel like that pretty much, Bryce wakes up Monkey and says that he has not been sober for this long in years, and now he can't sleep because he's a ghost. And yeah, like that is again genuinely interesting because he spent so much time and energy escaping, from his thoughts. Like he said, I don't mind being alone with my thoughts. Like for, what was it he said? When you have to put your phone away on the airplane, just that brief bit of, yeah. Um, and the, let's see, the, or brief, whatever. It's not constant like it is now. He spent so much time and energy escaping from all this, and now he's trapped with it. Maybe until Monkey. That's the thing. Is it until Monkey gets revenge, or is it that he should convince the monkey not to seek revenge? Because thus far, that's not completely clear. Like, all we know for sure is that he's not allowed to leave Monkey. And he didn't see his life flash before his eyes. He saw Monkey. So, some force is, you know, has connected the two. And yeah, I really do appreciate that we don't know for sure which it is yet. Because, like, again, it is a show that uses the violent act sometimes to get an emotional reaction out of us. Like some of these deaths are clearly sad ones, and yeah, I'm not sure that this is going to be, because like, it was cool seeing Monkey kill all those guys on the mountain, but it was also like, great, now there's more dead people, like what, or more dead, you know, live, dead beings who used to be alive. Feel free to check my math. What now? And instead of Monkey like sitting with it and being like, what the fuck did I just do? What am I becoming? Just, yeah, goes to the train. So, is going to keep going down this path, at least for now. And yeah, like, I don't know if it's every time Monkey falls asleep, there's going to be this communication with Alpha, but I wouldn't rule it out, and I think that does pretty much bring us to, yeah. So we have the bit where they go to the woman who, yeah, um, and I think that's where they start the gag of, which I did think was funny. Bryce struggling to get used to, yeah, and we'd already seen that he some of, yeah, some of the time he does realize, because he has to ask Monkey to turn on the TV, and then he's like, oh, this channel sucks. Nope, okay, you're not gonna change it, and that genuinely is funny because it's this thing of like, Monkey kind of just wants him to shut the fuck up, and then every so often it's like, oh right, he just doesn't ever. And so it's like, no, 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 yeah, sure, enjoy your sucky channel. Do you like this better? Do you like this better? Or should I, do you regret asking me to turn on the fucking TV now? Just, yeah, that was, I like that. And but yeah, the um oh yeah, and I think Bryce did try to use the remote and then ask, but he's like sneaking, or wait, is that later? Well, whatever. At some point in this episode, he's like sneaking and he's like, wait, what the fuck am I doing? I'm invisible. Yeah, I appreciated the part with, Monkey being overwhelmed by, because the thing is, this is the same area that Bryce walked through, and it's a very different reaction, and that helps to really underline, it is sometimes just about perspective. To Monkey, this is horrifying. To Bryce, it's everyday kind of stuff. He's even like, those animals are already dead. I mean, factually correct, no lie detected, but it's okay to be sad sometimes when you see something that is sad. But that's something Bryce has escaped from for so long. Like, in these two episodes, we fairly rarely see him actually feel the sadness that, I mean, in both cases, he's responsible for. He killed that cop, he killed the politician. Anyway, I think that is when we get the, yeah, I really like that, because, in the first episode, we don't know for sure, like, hypothetically, what would happen, because there's not, like, a lock on the door, what would happen if somebody showed up who was not invited? And this episode we see, she is ready. She's got she's got a gas mask and this sleeping gas, and then you wake up on the conveyor belt leading up to the saw, and she sits there and counts your money. That was, yeah, that was quite good. Um, and I think that was Monkey's money, wasn't it? Or did he leave it in the hotel? No, yeah, because he was there to buy more guns, wasn't he? Or was it information? Something like that. Anyway, yeah, I appreciated that they waited to the absolute last moment, you know, a Hollywood convention for Monkey to free himself. And then we have the bit with yeah, the entire fight was really cool, and I like Bryce being like, at first he's like, okay, so she's just this old lady. Oh, I guess maybe she's dead because she seemed to have tuberculosis, and she is still like coughing, but she moves fast. Like she climbs very fast, and she's a great shot with like those are very near misses, and I guess maybe the time she hit the hand, that might not even have been a miss. Yeah, that was really great. And then the thing with, well, what is Monkey gonna do? And so Monkey starts throwing shit, not literally, but that's, yeah. And I really liked how Monkey throwing fish went from just this like desperate action where we're like, I don't think that's gonna work. Like I got the same feeling as not exact, not 100%, but similar to the snowball throwing in the first episode. It's like this is not gonna work. This is just gonna make things worse. And then it actually does. Her arm ends up inside the mangler, and yeah, that somewhere Robert England is smiling. And the yeah, she's like, it's only a flesh wound, and tourniquets it off, and then they can continue the battle. And yeah, she does end up dead, hoisted by her own petard. And yeah, obviously it's not fun to watch violence against women, but it is, you know, it's a scene that starts with her having put Monkey on one of these conveyor belts that would have led to his death, and it ends with her, you know, near the end of the scene at least. She is the one dying like that. If she had just tried to communicate with Monkey, I mean, it would have been difficult because at this point he's not very communicative. I can imagine that's going to change, considering that by the end of this episode, they've somewhat started on that. And it's going to open up a lot of dramatic opportunities for them if he is at some point in this show able to communicate. But yeah, she chose violence and it backfired. What was that saying? Live by the sword, die by the sword. And that is, of course, also this thing of, Bryce doesn't like to think about it because it was his idea to go there. He doesn't like to think about it, but this is still his world, and this is what happens when someone breaks rules. It is against the rules for someone to pursue, you know, someone in this world. Like, it's unclear if she has any idea that this really is just for information, but she probably assumes that it's violence. Or wait, does she say? I think she might have actually said that she thinks he's there to the monkey's there to kill. But you know, she is so used to violence. You know, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like an excess use of metaphors in too short of a time in the video. Anyway, I think that does bring us to... So at first I wasn't sure what the purpose of the scene was because they didn't really get anything out of it. But it does lead to Bryce and Monkey seeing the general, Bryce recognizing that those are the mountain men, and the cops, being on the oh, right, yeah, yeah. So, okay, so it's possible that maybe the cop is not necessarily going to think of Monkey as the one who killed his partner, but, the hair of the ape that killed a person might help the, oh, right, monkeys aren't apes, is that how it goes? Whatever. It's a reference joke. And the, yeah, maybe he'll be able to... I could imagine him realizing that this is, that the monkey is going around killing multiple people in multiple areas, I mean. And I suppose that does bring... And that's, of course, part of why, because you have the thing about he's being secretive about it. And that... No, yeah, I think he does believe that this is the one who killed his partner. Because if... Yeah, I believe it's one of those things where it might get kicked up to a higher level. They might bring in someone else if it's someone who's, this dangerous and this, that kind of level of perp. So anyway, I think that is, yeah, and I did like that, yeah, he does genuinely, Monkey does feel bad about that, and he's going to put flowers on your grave, crime scene. And that again is, Bryce is like, you never go back to the crime scene. He's genuinely just not thinking about, like, he's annoyed. He's like, you keep killing people that we need to get information from. He's not like, you are taking a lot of lives. The gravity of it, it's very different for him and Monkey. I suppose that does pretty much bring us to the yeah, I appreciate the thing about, used to be when you got called in because someone had been killed, they had just been shot. And I suppose... Oh, and also the line, which half of her do you want to interrogate? Yeah, I think that might be... covers that. So let's see, there's the... I think the next thing is the funeral. And oh, right, yeah, we have the thing with, the campaign that the other guys, like, out of respect, I'm going to cease my campaigning. We both know I've won. And yeah, she points out, what an asshole, he's just there to gloat. And the thing about, well, we can't campaign without a candidate, but they're, yeah, that was a campaign speech. I do agree with the... Yeah, and we can tell very clearly she wrote it, because we were told in episode 1 she puts things in speeches that are very appealing to people, And yeah, I really loved... So, there's multiple things going on here. One of them is just, they're trying to channel this into... Because, like, they are actually really upset about this, but this is, everybody grieves in different ways. Some people do choose to try to do something that the person that died feels, felt very strongly about, that sort of thing. And, I do appreciate, like, technically if they win, if they have a similar policy to at least some of what he was proposing, it would be good. And I mean, the fact that the other guy's gloating, I would not rule out that he you know, is at least part of why it even happened. Anyway, I think that does bring us to the let's see. But yeah, the one of the other things going on here is the and that again is like I don't know that he would necessarily want them to turn a eulogy into a campaign speech if he had survived. And the yeah, then we have Bryce. At first he's like, that seems a little intense, but then it lands. He has to sit with the fact that this is, he's caused this kind of situation countless times. He has taken so many lives, and you know, I I believe personally that there is at least nearly always at least one person who cares deeply about, you know, any person that you can think of. Yeah. The and yeah, it's he's never had to think about that before. To him it was just part of the way he escaped. And yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily, at least so far, a show that is like constantly conveying, you know, like clear ethical guidelines or something. But I do think, I think ideally we all think about what our actions lead to, how we will be remembered. And this is, of course, these are things that Bryce never thought about. He, he kills for money and in part to kill the pain, and then he drinks to get through the parts of his life where he's not killing. And now he's sober, stone cold sober, no sleep, and hearing what people think of him. And yeah, I mean, there's that thing about no one will remember Bryce, is basically what the eulogy / campaign speech is saying. And it looks like Bryce doesn't necessarily have a good counter argument to that. He didn't really think about it. That's, yeah. We were told in episode 1 that he used to have a family, but there's like a struggle. I guess is it possible that later in the show Monkey will like convey something? Because they just, in this episode, they make the ghost reference, so maybe he'll be the medium. That is also, I quite appreciate, the show makes the pop culture references faster than even I can. Also the Cape Fear thing. And I think that is, yeah, so, Monkey is hungry, understandably so. And it's also just a good way to like convey, because this is the kind of thing that a human being might have dealt with ahead of time, because this is, while on a mission, you maybe want to focus entirely on, because like I wouldn't rule out that if Monkey goes to the right place in Tokyo, he's just, gonna be able to buy food if he points at it and hands over enough money, or possibly, enough money to pay and enough money to make the other person not care about selling to a monkey. But animals are, of course, they it's instinct. When they feel a need, they deal with it. Anyway, yeah, and oh my god, yeah, we see them outside just amusing themselves by, they were betting on if one of them could, decapitate this bird. And yeah, we find out not long after. Monkey, and I also appreciate they didn't feel the need to show that, because it's, there's enough action in the episode as it is, and it's really primarily about the consequences but yeah, he ripped their faces off, and then the fact that you know other members of the gang are like, you must have done this to the other gang, which also, they are basically pointing out, hey, there are actually some human criminal gangs and such who are as brutal to their opponents as, you know, some animals are. And yeah, I do think that is something worth noting, thinking about. That is deeply fucked up. And let's see. I guess I'll just briefly note. So I've said it before, but just in case, if this is your first video of mine, personally, I do have a stronger, the people I think some people I especially think we need to stop from harming others are the very wealthiest. Many of them cishet white men, at least here in the West, and I can't speak to the rest of the world. They cause misery and even death on such a massive scale that, yeah, and a lot of the people who cause violence on a smaller scale, a lot of that can be dealt with social programs and such. But when it comes to the rich, like, I don't believe in using violence against them. But, you know, some of them I think it is necessary to, you know, they have too much power now, and that needs to be, their wealth needs to be spread out between more people, and we need to make sure that there are consequences when someone powerful does the wrong thing and harms others, in part because they can harm so many more, and in part because they don't have to. There is nothing forcing them to. Like, sometimes, there are some poor people who end up committing crime because they don't have the resources to completely avoid it, but rich people do. Anyway, I think that does bring us to, yeah, that was a fun diversion when the kid is like hugging and chasing Monkey. And yeah, he does end up in his little monkey suit, sans tie, because he doesn't know how to tie a tie. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, they had the tease at the end of the first episode. I guess I should have figured that it would be a child's suit. And that's also just, oh my God. So it's a child's funeral suit is what we're looking at. That's what he's going to spend, I don't know, however long in. And yeah, the child just, yeah, didn't want to participate in the funeral, so it's just sitting there on, and playing. And by the end of the episode has gotten their hands on shuriken, which I'm not even sure if that's gonna be like a plot thing or it's just, a fucked up joke. But either way, that is, yeah, be careful you don't fun with weapons someone. And I think that is just about, yeah, the part where Bryce is trying to, he can't quite see the guy's face. And by the end of the episode, we still don't know who that is, and we didn't hear everything that he said to the general. But, with the general's wallet, it's possible they'll be able to find him. And let's see, that does bring us, I need to think. The other thing was I do also appreciate, like, it is very Bryce that the first bit of sign language that he manages to teach is to flip off others. And by the end of the episode, it's very clear, like, Monkey did understand he was being sarcastic when he said thank you, that it meant thank you. And I think that is, let's see, there was at least one more thing that I really want to make sure to say. What was it though? It was the, let's see, we have the, yeah, I think it was the, so yeah, Monkey fights during the big, the gangs taking each other on, and that is caught on security camera, and I suppose that does cover the, let's see, I feel like there's at least one more thing. Yeah, I appreciated the fact that, the thing about Monkey getting distracted because, just, yeah, wants, excuse me, revenge over the general, understandably so. Once again, I'm against it, but we can see how this ended up being the case. And then we have the, they fight, and General ends up roadkill, and I suppose that does pretty sure, which, I quite appreciate, because like they have the wallet to go off of, but the cops, you know, are looking for Monkey as well. It's not like he's gonna have an easy time to hide, and that does, yeah, so Bryce and the audience, well, I guess maybe also Monkey to some extent at least, understand about, the other guy. They have to find out who he is, but, excuse me, Monkey is too focused on General, and yeah, because like that is the thing, like he's so hyper focused on getting revenge that he's letting himself become distracted. And in general, like, you know, again, it would have gone better if he hadn't killed those, you know, when the bird was killed. He does, like, it's that thing of a willingness to violence, in addition to being generally detrimental to society in many cases. Like, if you don't focus it, it's not even beneficial to your own cause. And yeah, there are a number of people, fictional and otherwise, who ended up going too far with the violence because they never learned to control their temper, and it screwed things up for them. Now, I suppose that does pretty much, let's see, the, yeah, so there at the end, we see I like that, because of who he is, the cop, his partner, she thinks that it's, she doesn't realize that he's hiding evidence. She thinks that he's, what was, like, she said drugs or something. That is sadly a credible allegation. And I suppose, let's see, I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say about this, but I need to think about what it was. Yeah, and that's when, she's got the line that when she left the island, she vowed to not change who she was. And that again has me wondering if she really is going to just let him kill someone if they could arrest that person. Because the thing is, if she lets him think that, and then he draws his gun on the suspect, if she draws her gun on him, on her partner cop, is he still going to kill the suspect knowing that she might kill him? Because at that point, if she does really kill him, essentially she just has to tell the truth, except maybe leave out the part where she technically had heard him say that he was going to kill the suspect. But who's going to challenge that, you know? So that, yeah. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to more of the show, and I suppose that does pretty much cover. I'm just gonna real quick mentally fast forward through the entire thing and see if let's see. Yeah, it was a great image when Monkey is looking at the general and sees all the bodies of the monkeys strewn on the ground. And let's see. I think that does pretty much cover the let's see. So the yeah, I in the tease at the end of the first episode there was, you know, a clip of someone explaining possibly fully, possibly just partially the thing of the two being connected. And yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to learning that. And you know, we do see throughout the episode that that is definitely the case, such as when, you know, the monkey conveys, yeah, it's like, listen, Bryce, we are connected, and you know, then says, I'm hungry, and he says, I know, and you know how I know? Because we're connected.